So let's dig into the plants now. So we are in such a long growing season here in Texas that I break it down into 3 different areas. We have early spring, mid-spring, and then late spring. So early spring, these are the plants that we start actually back in December. I seed out my tomatoes and pepper plants on December 15th.
Wow.
And they grow for 3 months under my grow lights. And I do upplant them at some point. And we do have videos on our website that show how to do that. But those plants specifically will keep growing in small containers fabulously, wonderfully. So as long, we try to give them as much of a head start as possible. You can't do that with everything, but with these, you definitely can. So we're starting them 3 months before the average last frost date. Be sure that you plan on hardening off anything that you're starting inside so that they get used to that transition to the outside world. And then also included in the early spring crops are going to be your green peas and potatoes. So did y'all plant potatoes in the spring?
We did potatoes in the fall last year. And I don't know if I showed you the pictures. I think I texted you. We were successful in that. The baby potatoes.
Yeah.
Because we should have done the bigger ones. I think you said in like August or September, maybe.
Yeah.
So we did the organic smaller ones. And those were successful. And we harvested, I think, end of November.
Okay. Yeah. So spring is really our big potato season.
Okay.
And so if you're looking for a massive potato crop, because potatoes are nice because they're one of the few sources of carbohydrates that we can grow.
Yeah.
And so if you're a farmer, then we focus on there's not a whole lot. You know, there's like corn and potatoes are really the primary ones for calorie density for carbohydrates, right?
Yeah.
So potatoes are a big crop for us because our family eats quite a few of them. All right, tomato tips. So these are the things that I most commonly get asked about tomatoes. So for one, it's very important to trellis your tomatoes. So there's 2 types of tomatoes that you can grow. One is called a determinate and the other is an indeterminate. So the indeterminate grow for an indeterminate amount of time. That's the best way I can explain to remember it. They're the vining tomatoes. They will vine as long as there's growing conditions conducive. So mine have an 8-foot tall trellis. They go all the way up to 8-foot tall trellis. They come down, touch the ground, reroot, and then start growing again. So by the end of the season, it's a total tomato jungle. Yeah. It's a little scary to go in there, especially when the garden spiders come out and start making nests throughout there.
Yeah. You put your hand in
you have to like walk through it. Like I have a tunnel of arches of tomatoes that are just huge. And it's at some point I just get tired of going in there. But a majority of what we grow about 100 tomato plants a year, and 75 of them are indeterminates. And those are going to be like your classic heirloom tomatoes. So like the black crims and the some of the beefsteaks and all the crazy looking ones, those are all going to be indeterminate tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes are the smaller bushing ones, and they're really the ones that have been cultivated to be small because it's very difficult in the commercial world to deal with these indeterminate crazy monster out of control growing beast, you know,
at scale.
Right. Yeah. Right. So in the commercial world, they prefer the determinants because they put all their fruit on at once, then they can be harvested. The plant can be removed from the ground and they can do it again. So indeterminates are like slow and steady. They'll produce all the way up until the first freeze, but they do just get out of control in their size. So you want to prune indeterminates. You don't need to prune determinates. So determinates, again, they're going to set all their fruit at once. You're going to harvest them, and then you can go ahead and pull that plant out of the ground. An indeterminate will, if you don't prune it, it's going to really put all of its energy into making lots of green leaves and branches. If you do prune it, then it will put its energy into forcing the fruit that sets on that plant to mature and develop. And that's what we want. We're looking for maximum output. So on the bottom picture here, I'm always doing experiments in my garden to see what efforts do we do that are worth the effort? Like what things people say, do this and this and this. And so I always do experiments to say, well, is it worth it?
Test it.
That's right. Like maybe it does help me, but if it doesn't help me like a lot, I'm not going to spend the time doing it. Yeah. You know, like if I did all the gardening advice that everybody said, like maybe my garden would be 10% better, but everything that we're not doing, we're not doing because it doesn't make that big of a difference.
Yeah. So it's like in permaculture, input, output.
That's right.
The input doesn't justify that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can see here the difference. I love this picture because this clearly shows the difference. The one on the left has had heavy pruning. So the plants are focusing on going taller and setting their fruit. Yeah. It's not focusing on making 62,000 side branches and getting big and bushy. Yeah. And that's what you can see how bushy the one is in the middle. And because of the angle of the camera, you can't quite see this one on the end here, but they just get wider and greener and foliated. And that's not what we're looking for. And I don't eat tomato branches.
Yeah, less tomatoes and just
a lot of big, crazy growth. Yeah.
That's what we did all day Sunday for gardening club was we pruned tomatoes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I planted like 7 different types of tomatoes. And so,
Yeah, I was doing that last night too. And if you get the stuff all over your hands, I don't know if do you wear gloves
when you stuff?
It's like a green film that will cover your fingers. Gojo is really great at getting that off. It's worth getting that.
I should have worn gloves because I did get bit by a scorpion recently in the garden. So, but I still didn't wear gloves on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't ever wear gloves, so I hear you.
Yeah, but makes you stronger.
That's right. That's right. Another tip that we like to tell people: if you have a real problem with pests, then you can pick your tomatoes when they're green and they're just starting to blush and bring them inside and finish ripening them then.
Okay.
So when people, when stores advertise vine ripened tomatoes, they are not leaving those tomatoes on the vine until they are bright red and soft they are not doing that. Because once you do that, your shelf life is like 2 days.
Wow.
So they can't commercially ship them. When they say vine ripened tomatoes, they are allowing a green tomato to get that first hint of the blush stage, and then they're harvesting it.
And then it lasts how much longer?
Oh, just so long. So we had our first freeze like mid-December this year. I picked 70 pounds of green tomatoes that were on my tomato plants at that time. And I was still canning tomato sauce like well into January because they were still ripening, a month and a half later. And there were so many at once I could actually can tomato sauce, which is crazy.
That's the next class we should do is a canning class.
Yeah.
Make some marinara.
That's right. Yeah. So don't when I tell people this, they're always like, oh, but I wanted you're getting vine ripened tomatoes. And you're going to save yourself. If you leave a tomato on the vine until it's all fully red, you are just inviting pests because they're going to smell it and they're going to all come.
And ours cracked. Like they would get cracks from the sun.
Yeah, so the cracking is typically evidence of uneven watering.
Oh.
So if you don't have a drip irrigation system, then that would be the reason for that.
Yeah, we were watering we just bought a drip irrigation system. We haven't installed it yet.
Okay.
So we were planning to put the first one in the food forest since that's where the trees are and they're a little more fragile in the early years. And then the next project will be the garden. But until then, I'm going plant to plant with my hose.
Wow.
Because last year I would broadcast.
Yeah.
And then the weeds were like, hello.
Yeah. So aerial watering like that, not only you're watering the wind-blown wind seeds, but you're also more likely to get fungal diseases and bacterial diseases that way because water from above promotes that. So drip irrigation really is it's a fabulous investment. Yeah. So you'll want to keep an eye on if you get a big rain anytime this summer and you have watermelon or cantaloupe or tomatoes on the vine, you'll want to be ready to pick those quickly because they're the ones that are going to want to split.
Yeah. And we had a lot of that was another thing is learning when to harvest the melons, which I think I planted in the spring, but started to be ready in like June-ish.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would think that they needed to stay there longer. And the next thing you know, there were like maggots underneath and they're like, eating. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like yesterday. Like, how did this happen so quickly?
Yeah. Well,
but after a big
remind me and we'll try to touch on that. But yeah, for sure, the raining, if you have drip irrigation, then you have such a constant supply of moisture in the soil that when you do get a big rain, it's not a shock to the plant.
Yeah.
But if you're getting like a full drying out of the soil in between waterings, then that's